Abstract expressionists and myself had, what they had in common, we had in common was touch. I was never interested in their pessimism or editorializing. You have to have time to feel sorry for yourself if you're going to be a good abstract expressionist. And I think I always considered that a waste. But what we did, that, you know, like what I did, that looks like abstract expressionism, is that with their grief and art passion and action painting, they let the brushstroke show.
Leo Castelli, take one.
But the great event of my career happened a little later, just about 1 month after my opening. And that was a show at the Jewish Museum. And one painting that I stumbled upon that surprised me very much, and I was quite stunned by it, as a matter of fact. It was a green painting. I looked at the nameplate, and it said Jasper Johns. I never heard that name, and I almost thought that it was an invented one. But as I also didn't understand what the painting was about. It was a green painting, square green painting for me. I didn't recognize it, as I found out later, that it was a target. Anyway, 3 days later I went to Rauschenberg's studio.
At Black Mountain I studied with Albers. And I don't know, I'd like to say I learned humility, but I was so uncertain and shy that I don't think that I could use more humility. I went there for discipline, however, not humility. I mean, like what I learned from Albert, that you had to have a good reason to decide one color over another. But in the exercises, seeing the clinical tricks that was involved in color, I met a lot of nice colors. I picked arbitrarily the most difficult color that I could work with. And it was red, because red goes black very quickly. None of those early things were about negation or nihilism. They were more like celebrating the abundance of color as opposed to the schwindel of color. And then gradually it just opened up, and I found like got a little closer to yellow, which made orange, and then, you know.
Nobody had understood Rauschenberg before. I had been wildly enthused about his show a few years before at Egan's. It was the so-called Red Show, which was a fantastic event that nobody understood. He didn't sell a single painting out of the show, except perhaps to friends who gave him $50 so that he could go on paying his rent for a painting that would be worth now $40,000 or $50,000.
One of the things I wanted to try was an all-eraser drawing. And I did drawings myself and erased them, but that seemed like 50-50. And so then I knew that I had to pull back farther, and like if it was going to be an all-eraser drawing, it had to be art in the beginning. And I went to Bill and told him about it, and he locked the door, and it started with a portfolio of drawings, and then, no, not those, and then went to another portfolio, and he said, these are drawings I would miss. So he pulled out one, he put that back, and then he said, now I'm going to give you one really hard to erase. And he picked out another. And he was right. I spent, I think, nearly 3 weeks with no fewer than 15 different kinds of erasers. And that made it real. I mean, that wasn't, I wasn't just making a few marks and rubbing them out myself. I may have said that painting relates as much to life as it does to art, or vice versa, but I don't think so. I said that you couldn't make either. And you had to work in that hole between.
What is that space between?
It's undefined. That makes the adventure of painting.
One of the key early pictures within the proto-pop movement, perhaps the most important of all, is rebus, which is a word that means puzzle. And in this single painting of Rauschenberg's, as early as 1954, there's a veritable anthology of the possibilities that are going to take over during the period that's coming up.
So I prepared a ground of newspapers, but colored sections, which happens to be the funnies. So that I had an already going surface, so that there wouldn't be a beginning to the picture. And so just all be additive. I mean, it doesn't really matter what's inside. It's like when it stops, because you're dealing with an object, what it can make you think of how it could continue. You begin with the possibilities of the material, and then you let them do what they can do. So the artist is really almost a bystander while he's working. I mean, the hierarchy of materials is completely broken down.
In my first show of Rauschenberg's, there was a curious couple called Factum 1 and Factum 2.
I painted 2 identical pictures, but only identical to the limits of the eye, the hand, the material, adjusting to the differences from one to another. Neither one of them was painted first.
He wanted to show that nothing was really casual. Even the slashes, the brush strokes, the drips were calculated. And curiously enough, it was in defense of a movement that he moved away from. It was in defense of abstract expressionism.
My idea wasn't that I wasn't involved in chance as much as I was that I felt isolated. I wasn't interested in attaining a precious state of isolation. I was interested in what was around me. Art doesn't come out of art. I mean, you don't work with one foot in the art book. And no painter has ever really been able to help another. And I had no interest in being better or worse than any other artist. I mean, I had enough self-respect to know that somehow we were different, and my work, when it functions, celebrates that. My paintings are invitations to look somewhere else, and they have been for a long time. like the new piece is like how not to throw your newspaper away, because that's where it is. And if you are conscientious at all, the information there in one newspaper, no matter where you pick it up, blow your head. If you pay $15,000 for something, you're not going to wrap the garbage in it, right? I don't know who buys newspapers, but I know how they don't read them and take them seriously. And it's the best book in the world.
We might have one last drink on that.
Shortly thereafter, just by chance appeared, was a modest, shy young man. And I was so curious to see what his painting looked like that I told Bob, could we interrupt looking at his paintings and go down and see what Jasper's paintings looked like. So he, you know how Bob always was, generous and friendly, and he said, of course, let's go down and see Jasper's paintings first. And so down we went.
It should feel at home.
Feel like?
At home, so that you're not living in an environment that you're not experiencing. And it's so easy to get accustomed to everything that's around you, thinking of it as just a utility or something that's invisible, and anything that can reflect light is of some interest.
You see, here is what so many people say about your work and your life. There is a childlike enthusiasm, there is a joy, and that you approach things without a sense of risk. You're just on a journey.
I think that an awful lot of time is sort of consumed in apprehension and fear and worry that could be used in action. I'm not fearless,
yeah.
You know. You can scare me. You actually do.
I do. How about fun-loving? Is that a description of you? One who's enjoyed.
I don't separate that from just everything else. I mean, I don't do vacations, you know. I mean, my greatest joy is in working. That's when I feel a wholeness and a celebration of a unity with everything around me. And I feel at least self-conscious.
When you're working?
Yes.
And when did you discover art?
I always drew, but I always thought that everybody drew. And I was on every, in school, that was the only interesting thing that I did, is I was on every poster committee and, anything that had anything to do with creativity. Yeah. And, but in Port Arthur, you didn't have an idea that there was, there was no such thing as an artist. Right. And in those days, it was a well-known fact that if you're an artist, that you have to go to France.
Yeah. This is post-World War II.
And that's where I discovered that I was about 40-some-odd years late.
The artist had left, or?
Well, they were doing sort of Freudian, Jungian dissections of great works.